Now, I'd like to welcome our first guest, Sally Seyal, a longtime volunteer with Raptor Rehabilitation in Louisville, Kentucky. I hope you're not expecting a dinosaur to spring onto the set and devour your host, because raptors are actually birds, including eagles, hawks, falcons, owls, kites, and vultures. Raptor Rehab receives nearly 300 sick, injured, and orphaned birds of prey each year from all over Kentucky. Their primary goal is to rehabilitate these birds so that they can be released back to nature, preferably to the area where they were found. Now, Raptor Rehabilitation, when did the organization start, and what was there a need? Why did it start?
Raptor Rehabilitation of Kentucky was founded by John and Eileen Wicker in the mid-1980s. There were no facilities in the state to take care of sick and injured birds of prey, which is what raptors are. And in 1990, we were incorporated as a 501c3 nonprofit organization, which allowed us to start taking in donations and things like that. We take in about 300 birds of prey every year from the state of Kentucky, and that's hawks, owls, eagles, falcons, osprey, kite, vultures, those types of birds. So that's exclusively what we care for.
Right. Well, Sally, there surely had to be some obstacles in starting this organization and keeping it running with all volunteers. What were some of those obstacles?
I spoke to my director about that since I wasn't here in '85, and she said that the most difficult part for them, besides the financing, because they had to find money for the initial cages to keep the birds in, they had to have proper caging, they had to have their permits, they had to buy food and medicine and those sorts of things, and there was no funding in place because the public didn't know what raptors were, and they didn't understand their place in the environment, and it was commonly thought that only good hawk is a dead hawk. And they had to overcome that public perception, and we're still working on that.
Right. Now, and that's done through the education process, I'm assuming. And can you expand on that a little bit about how you educate the public as to your mission and what you're doing with the raptors?
We go out and we go to schools, a lot of elementary schools, middle schools, high schools. Civic groups will have us in, Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, Cub Scouts, and we take live birds and we present them to the audience. We explain their place in the habitat, their natural history, why that particular bird is with us, because our education birds are all birds that cannot be released. Our goal is to release them back into the wild. So the few that we cannot release, sometimes we can keep them for education, and we use them as our education ambassadors to try to spread the good word about raptors.
This is all done through volunteer work?
Yes, we're all volunteers. We have no paid staff. We have about, I think, 35, 36 volunteers at the moment. We staff the facility on shifts that work 4 to 6 hours once a day. So we aren't even full-time, but it's all volunteer work that does all the medication treatments, all the cleaning, lots of cleaning, food preparation, all those things need to be done, and they're all done by volunteers. So we're always needing volunteers.
What would happen if there were no more volunteers?
If there were no volunteers, we would not exist, because there's no money available that we can find to pay for the work that we do. And there is not enough money. Our budget's about $95,000 a year, and all of that is through public donations. We have a few small grants that have come into us for very specific items that we've needed, but for the most part, it's coins in a donation box or people writing a generous check.
Okay. So if I, sitting here, wanted to volunteer, or if someone's watching the show and they want to volunteer at the Raptor Rehabilitation Center, what do they need to do?
We need, really, all you have to have is an interest in the birds and a willingness to get a little bit dirty, and a commitment, because the birds need to be taken care of. Whether it's 100 degrees outside or 10 below, we still have to come and at least do the basic care and feeding for these birds. So it's a serious commitment. It's 1 day a week, but it is a serious commitment. You can't just come, every once in a while. We expect our volunteers to be there every day. We always need volunteers. There's sort of a natural attrition. Our young volunteers, either they grow up and get married, they find jobs, they move away. Our older volunteers it gets very physical, some of the work that we do, and sometimes we get a little older and you can't do the work anymore. So there's always a turnover of volunteers.
When we think about mice and some of the diseases that they carry, I know recently the hantavirus was a big thing in Yosemite Park. So this is all happening as we speak.
Right.
But we never really connect the raptors to being there in that chain to help control these matters.
Scientists have done studies, mathematical studies, and a pair of rats left to breed, and their babies grow up and you let them alone and they breed, and when they become adults and on, if you just leave that single pair alone for 3 years, you would have 3.5 million rats from a single pair. And you know, a hawk will maybe eat a rat a day. Wow. This owl will eat 3 or 4 mice a day. So you can see how the impact of just a single pair in an area can really keep the rodent population under control. Shall I bring him out?
Sure. Right. Bring him out, and here, let me clear this away for you, if you don't mind. And
he will possibly flap a little when he comes out.
Okay. Oh, he's beautiful.
He is a very pretty bird.
Yeah. Wow.
I'll put this down here.
Now,
say hi, handsome.
Hello there, Sorin.
He's probably going to look around a lot.
That'd be great.
This particular species of owl hunts with their sense of hearing as much as their sight. The feathers around his face kind of act like little radar dishes to bring the sound into his ears.
Right.
And this species can actually hunt in complete darkness. They've studied them, and they can catch mice in the dark.
Really? Now, Sorin, does he come with a story, a background?
Sorin was actually hatched in captivity. We had, for 2 or 3 years, we had a barn owl breeding permit. We are regulated by the state, so we had to get a permit. We had a female come in that was injured and couldn't be released, and so we paired her up with our male education bird. Mm-hmm. And they produced about 100 baby owls over 3 years.
Really?
And we were able to release them back out into the state of Kentucky. The barn owl is a species of special concern in the state because their numbers are so low. And his mother wouldn't take care of him. And sometimes that means there's something wrong with the bird. We looked at him and he has a vision problem. Now that's not that big of a problem for an owl that hunts with its hearing, but he might not be able to navigate, he might not be able to defend himself, to anticipate larger owls that eat him.
Right.
So he was deemed non-releasable because of the vision. He can catch up to 21 mice in a half an hour. They lay 6 to 11 eggs. They can have 5 or 6 babies to feed, and each baby might eat 3 to 5 mice. So this guy, every night, when he's got babies in the nest, will catch 30 to 40 mice a night.
Wow. How can we help?
Our dream goal is to have someone who has the disease of love of these animals to come in and be able to take over for our director. She and her husband are getting older. It's getting tougher all the time, and it's a full-time job for them.
What would happen if they were no more?
They are a sentinel species. They are sort of the canary in the coal mine. If something bad is going on in the environment, it's going to affect them, and usually affect them first. I give the example of DDT because it showed up as the source of the problem why we almost lost the peregrine falcon and bald eagles in this country back in the 1960s from DDT poisoning that we thought was safe until someone found out it was affecting those birds. But they didn't ban the chemical until 12 years later when they found it in human mother's milk and linked it to cancer.
We certainly appreciate the services that you're offering and helping us to understand a lot better how the raptors are affecting the ecosystem, as well as how you and your team as volunteers are affecting it as well. So we certainly appreciate you for joining us. Thank you for bringing Sorin and sitting here chatting with us. And we look forward to, again, talking to you down the road to see if we have helped to raise the awareness
of
what you're doing at Raptor Rehabilitation Center.